Grace and peace to you this day. I hope that God is bringing you a wonderful day. I'm out walking today in the woods. I'm actually in Maryville at one of its newest parks, Jarvis Park, which is not too far from where Donna and I live. I'm trying to get some walking done in the woods so that I can get my walking legs back in again. And this is a wonderful place to come. I'd encourage you to do so. But I'm out here today trying to get myself back in shape because Donna has decided with one of her workers that they are going to start a hiking club at her school for some of the students. And of course, the first thing that she decided to do was talk to the person she is closest to that has hiked most of his life. And so she turned to me and said, "Okay, what kind of advice can you give me?" And I came up with a list of things that they probably needed to do for their hiking club. And then we went down to the Little River Trading Club, and the staff there was Little River Trading Company. The staff there was wonderful, giving her all kinds of advice and some things that they could do. One of the things I told her was if she wanted to, we could teach the students some orienteering using a compass and how to read a map when you're out in wilderness like this. It reminded me of when I was a Boy Scout, and most of you know that I grew up in scouting. My dad was a scoutmaster, and we would go camping a lot. And one of the things, of course, that we did in scouting was learn how to use a compass and a map. And I have my little compass with me today. I have two compasses. This is my better one. I think this is the one that got me in trouble once. So we had what was called a sweet tooth Charlie that my dad would create. He was our scoutmaster. It was to help us learn how to find and use the compass and follow directions, and we had to learn what our pace was. And so he'd set up what he called a sweet tooth Charlie. In a sweet tooth Charlie, you're given compass direction and a number of feet that you have to walk, and you follow that with your patrol, and you follow through on that. And if you are following the directions correctly, if you're taking the right heading on your compass, if you take the right pace, and you're supposed to learn what your pace is when you walk. Mine was approximately 5 foot for every 2 steps I took. And if you did it properly, you would come to a can, usually a coffee can, and it'd be sitting next to a tree or a stump or a stone or something. You'd have to look for a little bit, but if you did your coordinates properly, you would come to that can and there'd be candy in it. One piece for every member in your patrol. And usually there's 3 or 4 patrols that were doing these, so everybody got a piece of candy. And all the patrols would be doing this, and we'd all have different coordinates. He'd worked it so we were all working different parts of the Sweet Tooth Charlie, and I think there's usually about 4 different coordinates that we would have to follow to get through the end of the course. Well, I was a patrol leader one year, and we were doing a Sweet Tooth Charlie, and we get to where we thought we were supposed to be, and we couldn't find the cans. And the whole course was like this. We'd get there, and we'd be standing at trees over here, or standing at trees over here, and we'd be looking around trying to figure out where the heck we were, and realizing the can was maybe 20, 30 feet away when we were looking through the brush. And I got back to camp and I'm trying to figure out why in the world were we so far off on all of our coordinates with what we were trying to do. And it suddenly dawned on me as I looked down at my compass. And I'm pretty sure this is the compass that I was using. And I had it on a lanyard at that point in time. Remember those? You used to make those out of those long plastic pieces that you'd twine them together and weave them together and make a lanyard. And most lanyards have a small metal hook at the end of it. My lanyard did. I had that small metal hook clipped into the hole of my compass, where I now have a string. And what I realized was that small piece of metal hook was throwing off my compass, because a compass, of course, works off the magnetic pole. And that little piece of metal was pulling my compass off just a wee little bit. just enough to throw us off track for what we are trying to do. How often does that happen in life? That just some small bit of something throws us off course, sometimes without us even realizing what's going on. Sometimes we think of the big things, and you can look around the woods that are here, and we can see the glory of God's creation out here, and we can see all that God has done. And sometimes we think of God and the glory and all these great things, and we forget sometimes it's those small things that interrupt our lives without us even realizing it until we're almost done. Think of that in biblical terms. We think about the flood that happened with Noah, but that started with very small droplets of water, but just continued and continued and continued and continued until there was a flood. How many times are there small things that can bring irritation to us? Think of a small sliver in your thumb or a finger or the palm of your hand, and how that irritates you to no end. Just those small things that can irritate us and sometimes bring us turmoil in our lives. But it's also sometimes we have to recognize the small things in life that bring us joy and gladness. That's biblical too. Think of King David. He started out as the smallest of all the brothers, the sons of Jesse, that were called to come before the prophet and to be the one that God was going to choose to be the king. Think of the time that Elijah, one of the prophets of God, went up on a mountain trying to see the face of God. And it didn't come to a powerful earthquake, and it didn't come to him in some kind of a firestorm. It came to him in a whispering, small wind. Sometimes we need to remember it can be small things that irritate us and bother us. It can also be small things that bring us blessings in our lives. We look at some of the big picture, but sometimes we need to look at the small picture to make sure those things aren't leading us astray, but to also make sure that we are seeing the small blessings in our lives that can mount up and bring to us such joy that we never knew before. Think of that as you're traveling through this day and the rest of the week. What are those things that can bring you joy? What are those things that may irritate you? Try to concentrate on the little things that bring you blessings in life. This is Pastor Steve, wishing you a glorious day. Amen.